Yeah. So let's start. I did read an interview recently. I forgot where it was about journaling. That the fact that you journal, and I do find
Yeah.
that songwriters fall into a couple of camps: those that journal and love to do it, those that don't but wish they do, and then those that
Right.
don't but have no desire to ever start. But it sounds like you're a pretty active journaler. Is that right?
I am. I journal quite a bit. It's usually like when if I get in a fight with someone, and then I'm like thinking about something over and over and over again. I'm like, no, just if you just write it down, it kind of gets those thoughts out of your head. And then maybe then you go back to it and maybe see like a little rhyme in there or just a phrase. I think one line in another song of mine, I wrote this song called Heart Island. That's like sort of from the perspective of an inmate at Rikers Island. And then I was looking back at my notes, and I had something about not being frustrated about our like case against the weekend. I was like, I'm not frustrated by the case anymore. And I was like, oh, that's a good line for this song. Just popped it in there, and took it. So you just take some things that are from reality, some things that are, and it combines with your imagination, where it's convenient.
But is it a deliberate? Are you journaling? I guess is it something? And this,
Well,
I guess, a two-part question. Do you write every day? Is it important? I guess let me ask you that. Is that important to write every day?
I would like to write every day, and I guess I am writing every day because I'm a big texter, so I get out a lot of thoughts by communicating with friends. So like yesterday, um, someone had sent me this like Stephen Sondheim podcast. And then I was like, I waited a little while, and then I wrote back this really long message about Stephen Sondheim and how he's kind of like a white rapper or something. And then I started writing a poem about coffee, in the style of Stephen Sondheim
In the text.
in the text. And I never sent the text. I just copied and pasted it into my notes and started writing a song about coffee.
Fascinating. I love that.
And I
So
was high also on.
that also helps, I'm
That
sure.
helps. It really helps. Like, it's funny. I didn't smoke any marijuana the entire pandemic. And so a lot of people were like, oh, so that's how you execute, that's how you finish an album. I was like, yes, but a lot of the songs started as, smoking some weed, feeling very emotional, getting so that I was so high that I can't do anything except write, or else I'm going to freak out, you know?
Yeah. Interesting.
And so I'll smoke, and then suddenly just, I need to find pen and paper and just need to write. And it'll just be 4 pages about, my vasectomy or something like that.
So smoking a way to get that process started, I guess is that a deliberate part of the process?
Sometimes it's just out of boredom,
Yeah.
and just something to do. And then you realize, oh shit, this is real. This is a drug is a very strong drug for me and alters the brain. And then I just have to do it. It's not like before I start puffing, I have it all set up or something.
Yeah.
I should, so that I'm not like frantically looking
right.
around for my journal or whatever. But you'll find, I'll see in the journals, it'd be like, June 20th, after smoking a joint. Okay, now I'm just going, and it just goes.
Right. This reminds me of a question I haven't asked in a while of songwriters. But some songwriters tell me that they write amazing stuff when they're hungover, because there's something about, and again, it's one of those two camps. Some people say, hell no, I can't write, but some people say it's the best time. They can't really put their finger on it, but there's something about, I don't know, the fact that that's all you can focus on, and you're so much in your head. So I don't know. I haven't asked that in a while,
and
but it made me think about that.
When you're hungover, you've got these feelings of like guilt about how you behaved the night before. You've got sadness and self-pity, and then just physical pain, which you can describe. And those always work well for songs, right?
Right.
And sometimes getting high, for me, smoking weed is not like a something I do to become euphoric. It's something I do to think differently.
Yeah.
Just get onto a different kind of radio signal.
Yeah. So with the I guess with the creative part of it, I mean, some people say, again, kind of like I'm just basing off what some songwriters tell me. Some of them say you need to create every day. Others say when they force it, whether it's songs or anything, things become a derivative. So they prefer to wait for that moment. But do you tend to force things, or do you say no, like it's just not meant to be today?
I like an assignment.
Mhm.
Once I started working with this with a mixer, like a guy who was mixing the songs, then he would be like, "Come on, where's the next song? Let's go.
Yeah.
You wrote that other one, and that was in 3 weeks. Where's the next one?" I'd be like, "Okay, I'll write another one here." So I like that, and just this past year with getting onto a record label and having to do all these other things like make music videos, do interviews, get press photos, it hasn't been very inspiring for me for songwriting. But I know
Yeah.
that's just like a stupid excuse. I should do it. I've got this studio. Um, but it was really like I spent this year of, okay, I finished cooking dinner. I got the children in bed. Now go to work from like 11 to 5 a.m. And because of the pandemic, I didn't have to like take the kids to school or anything. It was actually this benefit for me to be
Right.
able to really work late. And for me, like working at night is great because I finished all my familial duties, and I can just work for 7 hours from 11 to 6 a.m. and I don't even notice that it's late until you start going a little bit crazy,
Right.
overthinking things, and then you're like, maybe I should go to sleep.
Right. 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 So
But yeah,
I,
the like Paul Simon kind of idea of like every morning I wake up at 6 a.m. I drink a cup of coffee and I journal, and then a
right.
song comes from that. I'm like, I'm not that. I'm not that. I'm disciplined.
Yeah.
I should
But
be.
so rather than turn this into a, you know, did you get a lot of writing done during the pandemic question? I prefer to phrase this
Well,
as,
yeah,
do you write well with large expanses of time? Because it sounds to me like you write well with, like, maybe you write well under deadline. And
yeah,
I guess I go back to this idea. The theater critic of the Post, Washington Post, like a year ago, wrote this article about how Shakespeare wrote King Lear during the plague, and he can't wait till this is all over because artists are going to have so much to give us
yeah.
with all this time. But then I think it's, from the songwriters I've talked to, it's the exact opposite. So
Interesting.
again, part of them just said, hey, like, I can't create because I'm not leaving the house, and what the hell am I going to write about? But I
Right.
do find though that, so I guess I have a couple of questions here. One is, okay, so do you write well under emotional weight, or do you feel like an emotional burden or weight or some kind of emotional heaviness is a harder place to write from?
No, I think no. All my songs are written from an emotional weight, from
Okay.
some kind of. I need some stress in my life so that I can write about it. I'm
Yeah.
not really like I'm not a flowery writer. I'm not like I just kind of write conversationally.
Yeah.
So every song is like if I don't like to talk about it in public, but I can tell my friends like, oh yeah, no, this song's about this person. You know them, right? And they'll be like, oh right, of course. Okay, now
Right.
it makes sense.
Right.
Um, and it's just a way of getting something off my chest in kind of a general sort of way. And
Yeah.
those are always I love those kinds of songs. I love finding out that Sexy Sadie's about Maharishi or something.
Yeah. So is there a ritual? I know, like, for example, with me, that chair behind me is a place I love to write, but I often will revise in another chair.
Right.
And I don't know that could just be superstition, but for whatever reason, like John Danielle the Mountain Goats told me he wrote one of his songs at the dining room, or one of his albums at the dining room table, because that's where the mojo was. And so
Yeah.
I'm fascinated by the rituals. Like I read all
I
those
think
Paris Review articles, and yeah, go ahead. The
I think
rituals of the
well, I think sometimes, yeah, if you're in your studio, it can be a little bit daunting, or you can get really obsessed with getting the sound exactly right. So you can see this piano behind me. That's a
yeah,
new piano. But yesterday, when I was stoned, I went up to my old piano that's upstairs. I've got two pianos, and it's a really janky piano. I got it for $200. But because there's nothing around, all you can do is just play
yeah,
and maybe set up your phone and record it, and I was like, oh, I'm just gonna write a song about coffee right now. and there is something nice to getting away from the professionalism of the studio environment where you just focus on writing a song. And then I played it back and I was like, oh, this kind of sounds like a Lou Reed song. I was just like talk singing, you know, just trying to flow. And so, yeah, I think wherever I then this past summer, I was upstate and I thought like, okay, I'm going to be like recording in this cabin every day. I'm going to be recording, but I didn't record. I didn't do anything. I was planning a lot for this music video. I did a lot of journaling. But it wasn't inspiring for me to like sit down and write a song. And also, you know, it's just, I'm not in this period. Like, I really have like these periods where I'm playing live shows and I'm out there in the world and trying to just communicate with people this message. And then there's another period where you're trying to create the new message.
Right. So kind of the filling the well, that's the phrase artists always tell me, you know, they're times when they deliberately don't write because they use those times to kind of take in the experiences.
Yeah. And that's just built into the kind of professional musician lifestyle where you have this writing period, recording period, release, and tour.
Yeah.
And it's amazing to me, people that are like on tour and still writing and recording.
Yeah.
It's like, well, okay, I can't do that, you know.
So you went upstairs for that song. I'm curious, why didn't you write that song about coffee at that piano? What made you decide to go upstairs?
I think I was just up there.
Oh, okay.
I was just up there and I just sat down there. I think I was texting that guy about Sondheim, and then I was like, oh no, you should just put this into a song.
Right. Oh, right. That was the song. I have interviewed so many songwriters who talk about how many song ideas they get while they are moving. Now, I can give you examples. Now, there's the kind of big song ideas that people get when they're on buses or trains or planes. But then I've heard people say the role of swimming, hiking, walking, running, biking. And then there's the people that tell me that I just heard a couple, interview Yola last month, and she said how something about vacuuming. And I'm fascinated by that idea of the role of movement, especially how mundane movements tend to inspire creativity. So let's talk.
When I think about vacuuming, which there's a drone that you hear. So you get this, and anytime there's a little bit of a drone, even like a amp hissing. If I hear an amp hissing and maybe I'm cleaning, then maybe you hear like this little melody that goes along with it. And then you're like, oh, let's try to figure out what that melody is that goes along with this drone. So that's one way for me, it's more about getting like a sound, getting a little riff, and then I'll get some lyrical ideas a little bit later. But I do think that exercise, like I've started to do sprints and I'm like, oh my God, I feel my body. I feel alive for the first time in a little while. Like I definitely think that being sedentary and just sitting on your couch all the time and watching TV, even though that's the majority of what I do with my life, it's not that productive in terms of getting your brain to think that you're alive and you should be producing things.
Right. Yeah. But do you get I can go so many ways this.
And also, when there is something when you go on a hike, if you go up a mountain, there is, after about 10 minutes, there's something that switches in your brain and you start like communicating differently with your children or your wife or your friend that's up there. And there's something different than standing around drinking a beer. It's a different type of communication. Something gets released in your brain. I think there's probably some studies to talk about that.
I feel like this is all these things are segues. So I've actually written about this in the Washington Post. So cool. I've been a runner for many years, and there's actually, there is the answer to your question. Yeah. And I'll send this to you, actually, the article.
Cool. Yeah, I'd love
fascinating. To hear. There's a chemical called brain-derived neurotrophic factor that gets secreted by the brain during increased blood flow, which is exercise. So they put people, and this has been replicated in the lab. So this is not like snake oil science of, if you run, you'll think better. They put people on a treadmill for 20 minutes at 60% max heart rate, which is really not that much more than a moderate walk. and then administer a battery of tests to them afterwards. And those people always score higher than people that didn't exercise. So
Yeah.
so this is like when it comes to cognitive functioning, higher order thinking. But here's the cool thing. 30 minutes is about the ideal, but it's not dose responsive. So 60 minutes isn't twice as good as 30 minutes. And 90% max heart rate isn't better than 60% max heart rate. So there is research behind that. So there is actually something that does get, there's a chemical in there that does get secreted. So yeah, and you're absolutely right. So that's why people tend to get a lot of those great ideas when they're walking or biking or running or something like that.
Yeah, I just felt like my recall was better too. Like I was just speaking
absolutely
more clearly, and I was like, I'm not thinking about what is that word I'm trying to think,
Yeah, no, I mean that's what it is. But then I've also heard that people get ideas for melodies or something like that because of the cadence of whatever they're doing. I've heard people say they get the cadence of a hike tends to give them song ideas.
Yeah, I don't know. Not so much for me, I would say.
Yeah.
And I've been doing sprints. So I'm doing like oh my God, go.
Right. Right. There's no thinking going on there. It's
no thinking. It's just like, whoa, I can't believe and then when you do it, you're like, how do I not do this every day?
I interviewed Stu McKenzie from King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard. And he said he got a song idea from a car alarm that went off, and I've heard like turn signals inspiring.
Yes, driving. I could say with the turn signal on, or something, clicking. It's just like then you get the rhythm going for sure.
Yeah, isn't that
drumming? Yeah,
it's fascinating. I just think it's fascinating because I don't get many ideas. Like, how many ideas have I ever gotten for anything? Just sitting, going, let me think of an idea. They always happen when I go back to that idea of doing something mundane and repetitive tends to stimulate the brain. And I've always thought, well, how is doing anything, like there's got to be some part of the brain when you're vacuuming that's focusing on vacuuming. So you're still taking up brain power by doing that thing. How is that better than doing nothing?
Right.
But I guess it is.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, wait, what was I going to say? Oh yeah. I mean, yesterday I was listening to this great podcast. I mean, I do like to get some external, something that's a little bit smarter than me coming in,
Yeah.
So, I mean, a lot of the songs on this album are like from reading newspaper articles or something and being like, oh, that would make a good song,
Yeah.
And then I go back to look at the newspaper article 10 months later because I'm trying to find it, and I'm like, oh wow, I just stole an entire sentence from this this news article. But I'm listening. I can't these podcasts are great for road trips or something. But then if I'm just walking around the house, I'll get another idea and I'll have to pause it, write down something, take some notes. You're getting so much information from these podcasts. And I can't absorb it all. I've got to write it down. I was listening to this thing about the fall of the Mayan civilization, and he's just saying so many different things, and you have to write down Tikal and Copan, and because I want to look them up later,
So, so and you mentioned earlier the journaling and the notes and all that stuff. Yeah. I've always been interested in the filing systems of songwriters, because some people tell me, like, one guy told me, listen, it was Brian Fallon told me, if any songwriter tells me they ever go back to that notes app, they're lying. Like he never goes back to it. But then some songwriters tell me they have Excel spreadsheets of song ideas.
Right. And Weird Al has like a Excel set. Yeah, you should listen.
Oh, he does. But do you have anything? Because you must have so many ideas that have to be somewhere. And how do you go back and say, like you were saying, where the hell did I find that? And I don't know, do you have any kind of organizational system for going back to those ideas?
I do take notes, so I can look back at my notes for a song and be like, oh, wow, glad I didn't add that verse in.
Right.
You just have so many notes and then you kind of edit it down. But as long as you have a title in the note, then it's pretty easy to find.
Oh, that's okay.
Right. And then in terms, as far as my voice memos, which is also on my phone, as long as you have a title, you can go back to that little idea.
So that's
So
it.
it's better to have you just always need to have a title. It can't just be like cute melody or something.
Right, right.
And even then I could go back and be like, no, I remember there's something good melody. So that was a lot of how I would work with Yeasayer too, is like,
Yeah.
Get there a little early, already have listened to some melody. And then if we were trying to make up a new song, I'd be like, how about this one? And already have something a little bit planned out.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's just those people that are well organized. They're like mixing engineers, and so you have to. I can't get to that level,
You'd be surprised. It tends to be this dirt, because I think people want artists to be just this, going through rumpling papers. Where did I find that? But then they tell me no. I have one guy told me he has an Excel spreadsheet, and it's emotion. They're organized by emotion and then by theme. So there's so relationships, happy relationships, sad relationships, and he goes and he looks for those things. And I thought, wow, if people, I think, don't want artists. They want artists to be more of the, kind of not like that kind of thing.
I mean, have you watched the Get Back documentary yet?
No, I have not. I know I'm watching bits and pieces of it, but yes, I have to.
Oh my God. I mean, I realized that like Paul McCartney's just like, come on, lads, let's focus. He's got 20 songs ready and finished. And he's like, come on, John, do you have anything? And he's like, no, I'll come up with something. And and I would rather listen to John Lennon screaming out random words, and it hits me harder than like Joan was quizzical.
Right.
Whatever thing Paul McCartney has completely finished and polished with the A part, a B part, a bridge, whatever, So that's the Beatles are it's like a screaming match between the two of them and how they should be, and it's like this great complementary art that they put out in the world.
So speaking of lyrics, I'm guessing you're not a pen and paper when it comes to the lyrics. Are you a pen and paper person or just flat out computer or phone person?
I used to be pen and paper, and I still am pen and paper. When I'm journaling, it's always pen and paper.
Yeah,
that's the easiest thing to do. But then for lyrics, it's easier to kind of cut and paste when you're actually delivering a lyric on a vocal on a microphone like this, where you're going back and forth and it's easy to do it on the phone. And I actually learned that from Das Racist. You remember that?
Yeah, I interviewed him.
Okay,
This is when they first. It was Heems when they first came out. Gosh, and what did he say? So what did you learn?
Well, no, I produced a song of theirs, so I just had I had some beat lying around, and I was just kind of there at the recording studio while they were recording it, and I had an idea for a hook too, which was just a melody, and these guys are just lyric masters, so they just come up immediately with a lyric for it. And so I think I sang on it too a little, and then I'm just watching them holding. I think he had a BlackBerry at the time, just writing lyrics and looking. I was like, oh yeah, phone. That's a good way to have your lyrics. Right. Hold it right in front of your microphone, And the paper, you're always like trying to get a piece of paper on a music stand or taping it to the mic stand, and it just doesn't make sense. The phone is just very compact handheld device to display lyrics.
Yeah, but so I'm going to ask you a question about the minutia though of the pen and paper, because I do find that songwriters are I could do an entire blog dedicated to the types of pens and colors of ink that songwriters like to use when it comes to writing. So does that matter to you, like the type of pen? I mean, they are so brand loyal.
Yeah, I like the Le Pen.
You'd see, there you go. Right. I've heard that before. I forgot who told me that. So
the Le Pen,
yes.
It just the ink just comes out, it just flows. You just feel like you're, some guy from the Enlightenment writing down it.
Does the color of ink matter or not? No.
The Le Pens are pretty much black.
Oh, they are. Okay.
I think so. Yeah.
And what about type of paper? Because I've heard paper, people say it's got to be a legal pad. It's got to be this color.
I like it to be kind of small. I'm actually kind of worried because I did take a lot. Oh, those are receipts. I'm just kind of that guy who's like, sometimes I'm organized, and now I'm like, oh, where is that thing I took all these notes in yesterday? And it's small, so I could keep it in my jacket pocket.
Yeah.
Although the jacket pocket thing is your phone. If you have a note that you need to write down, I'm constantly writing notes.
I know. I'm going to throw out a couple Hemingway quotes for you.
Okay.
Hemingway said he could never write about Paris when he was in Paris. He needed distance to be able to write about a place. And so I'm curious your take on that, whether it's places or emotions. Do you need distance to be able to write about something, or is it better to write about it in the moment?
I think it's probably better to write about it in the moment. Because for me, it's always about like having an observation and then wanting to get it down and being like angry at myself for not getting it down. You know, when you're like,
Yeah.
Really for me, it's the best time is when you're falling asleep.
Talk about that. I've heard that before. Why is that?
There's this weird time when you're like not quite asleep where like an entire idea will come to you with, you know, melody, that kind of thing. And you think it's so clear to you what it is that you're sure that you're going to remember the idea. Of course I'm good every night. Of course I'm going to remember this. And it takes that extra motivation to say, no, get out of bed, go to the piano and put some chords to it, put a little idea down. You'll thank yourself later, you know? Or even just to write down a little idea for a phrase, you know?
Yeah.
And there was something I came up with last night and I just didn't I don't think I wrote it down. But other ones I'm like, I'll look at it and be like, oh yeah, that's fine. I'll put that as a line in the song.
Right,
you know?
right.
And it's not as profound as it felt like when you were falling asleep.
Yeah.
But it'll be fine as a little line in a verse for a song or whatever, you know. I do think also that I do think that when you're recording, when you're doing a lot of writing, it's a snowball effect of like the creative, you know, where your subconscious or whatever is going will just come up with things, you know.
Yeah.
Whereas if you get out of it, then your brain's like, okay, we're not in that mode anymore. Let's go back to washing the dishes.
Right. There's a book I read a couple of years ago called Homeland Elegies. I don't know if you read it. I forgot the guy's name, but it was it was a great book. And it's I'll look it on my afterwards. I'll look it up because I need to tell you the author's name. But the author, he's a Pulitzer Prize winning author, but the protagonist in the book is also an author. And there's always been this discussion of how much of that is actually him in real life. Anyway, character, the writer in the story uses a technique where he ties a pencil to his finger at night because one of his teachers told him that you know, when you wake up and you have that great idea, it's going to be gone within 5 seconds. And so he ties a pencil to his finger so that when he wakes up with a great idea, he doesn't have to look for a pencil. He goes right and he's got it right there. And it's and I thought that was so cool. That seems like it would be pretty dangerous. You'd probably stab yourself with a pencil.
Stab yourself in the eye.
Right.
I'm still recovering from a wound over sharp pencil in my pocket.
See, exactly. Right. But I thought that was really cool.
But now with the phones, you pick it up and you just write. It's bright. You can see it, you know.
Yeah. Have those ideas come in the middle of the night. You wake up and you go, you know, no, never.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, ideas come in the middle. Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Oh, definitely. Yeah. In the middle of the night. Yeah. I can think of certain lines. Yeah. That I came up with in the middle of the night. And it's always like someone else telling it to you or something. Singing. It's always like a song that's finished, you know. Yeah. I did record one song that was completely finished, and it was like a disco song. You know, it was like was arranged. It's always like fully arranged and produced. You know,
nice.
I don't think it was very good, but I recorded it the next day. I think so. Yeah, because if you record at night, the phone is just amazing. It's as a tool for songwriters because you can just go, you know, make a little beat. Because it's all dependent on the tempo and everything, you know, because writing it down, you can't really get the tempo.
Yeah.
Writing it down, it's such an advantage to be able to record it. Right. Because writing it down, you'd be like, okay, dotted.
Right.
This is up tempo, you know, maybe 120 BPMs or something. I don't know.
So let's talk about writers. That I do find that songwriters are voracious readers. And I did see that you had referenced James Joyce. I forgot. It was one of the recent interview that you did. So yeah, let's talk about who are some of your favorite authors, whether they influence your songwriting doesn't really matter to me, although I'm curious if they do, but who do you like to read? Do you have specific genres that you
I
like
mean,
more than others?
my like guilty pleasure, or not guilty pleasure, but the genre that I can read the fastest is a rock memoir,
Oh, totally. Yeah.
or a rock biography. So, I really enjoyed the Viv Albertine close, music, boys, boys, boys.
Yeah,
Memoir.
I've not read that one.
Oh, so good. It's amazing. Um, and I like the class, the Ray Davies one, X-Ray, and Neil Young, Shaky, and the kind of classic rock things. I founded a sci-fi book club. So I'm right now I'm trying to I'm struggling to get through Margaret Cavendish's what is it called? Visions of a New World. I call it The Blazing World. And it's very difficult for me to, the sentences are half a page long.
Hey.
And I keep reading it before bed, and it just puts me out right away. And I'm trying to finish it like it's for school, because I already have a lot of ideas of analysis of the text, just from reading the biography and 15 pages of it. And the head of the sci-fi book club, I saw him the other day, and he was like, you only have to read one page to come.
That's all.
Yeah. But I've written there's a song on on the Yeasayer Amen and Goodbye album called Divine Simulacrum, which I had written in response to Solaris, which I read for the sci-fi book club. And it's just nice that if you have like a book, you can it's like, okay, this is the prose version of this story. Now can I make a song version of it? And there's so many ways of approaching it. You can take on a character.
Yeah.
So it just makes the job of picking a theme for a song a little bit easier.
Yeah.
Which is always my technique, is once I have the theme, then anything goes, right? So I think there's some people, I imagine like someone like Stephen Malcolmus or Beck, they're just like playing with words, and they've got their, on some songs, they've just got so many different rhymes and great flowery language and metaphors and similes, and they're like rappers. It's like no one spits like those guys. Right. And then there's songs where it's like, no, I'm gonna write a song about being sad that my lover left me or whatever, and then you just that's the theme, and now write the song to that theme. Try to make the chorus sum up that theme.
So the songs start with themes then?
Yeah. I mean, they probably start with a melody. They probably start with a melody, some chords, some movement, and then, okay, what's this song going to be about? All right, how about it's about this guy that was discharged from the hospital because his symptoms weren't severe enough of COVID, and they end up dying in some hotel. Mm-hmm. Okay, that's a good theme. Let's go with that. And then I just kind of find all these different sources to pull from. This verse is going to be about Warren Buffett saving the hospital. This verse is going to be about Andrew Cuomo being kind of creepy, and
so you're doing this.
This verse is going to be about the ice machine that I'm picturing in the hotel, and I'm combining it a little bit with my grandmother when she was dying, asking for ice chips because she was like so thirsty. So it's just combining a lot of different things together,
Yeah. So are you pulling these from different spaces? I mean, you could write one verse today and the other one could be a week. Like, are you, I guess, are you also going back to those notes apps and saying, there's a verse I can use in this song. So you're not a very linear songwriter, or yes? No,
or going back to that written pad and saying and underlining that one line about not caring about my case anymore. Yeah, it's this great scene in the Get Back was George Harrison comes in. He's like, I just keep remembering you telling me back in the day, many years ago, that once you get an idea for a song, just knock it off, finish it off straight away, just finish it, just get it done. And John Lennon's like, oh, good advice. I wish I took my own advice.
It's a good imitation, by the way. I'm very impressed. So I interviewed Daniel Lanois about 6 months ago.
Love Daniel Lanois.
And he said all of his songs are on, speaking of paper, 11 by 22 art paper. And there's circles, there's thought bubbles, there's lines, there's arrows, there's no linear. Yeah. It's not linear at all. Stuff is all over the place. And that reminds me of a little bit of what you're talking about. I mean, maybe not to that extent, but he says, yeah, there's nothing linear. There's numbers. There's just stuff all over the place. But he takes an 11 by 22 piece of paper, and that's where the songs happen.
That's a big piece of paper.
It is a big piece of paper. Yeah. Yeah.
It's very big.
Right. I know.
Seems a little unwieldy. Yeah. Neil Young talks about writing on newspaper.
Yeah.
Because then the words kind of, they don't stick out as much. They kind of are just embedded within the noise, which is how songs are. They're not just words being spoken in silence. They're words that are being sung with melody and usually with instrumentation behind it.
Yeah.
But no, I don't do that. For me, it's more, try out something, try out a line, record it, listen to it back. If it makes me squirm, if I think it's so unbearable, then I'll change it,
Yeah.
And so much of it depends on how it's recorded,
right.
How the line is delivered,
What makes it unbearable? I'm curious. What's the litmus test for being unbearable?
I don't know. You just hear it and think, oh, that's cheesy.
Yeah. That's a litmus test, a cheesy
right?
litmus test.
And it's totally subjective, I mean, something that I think is moving and earnest and genuine, someone else might turn off in 2 seconds because they don't like the sound of the guitar,
Right. So back
and
to
I also go to other people. I check things in with my wife, I'll be like, what did you think of this? And she'll be like, I think you could do a little better. And I'm like, fuck you, but thank you.
Right. Yeah. So back to the reading. So you're a sci-fi fan? I mean, because I guess is that a genre that you tend to go back to a lot?
No, not particularly. I think my favorite genre would probably be like a satire, or he's like so whatever. I mean, I love Kurt Vonnegut. I think about Slaughterhouse-Five like on a daily basis.
Just gonna mention that.
Yeah.
The first time I read it, it's funny. There was a point I forgot what part of the book, but there was a part in the book when I finally realized, it's okay to laugh. Right. Right. Because the first time I read it, I thought, this is so strange. And it's about such a tragic event. And I forgot what the line was, but I thought, okay. I almost had to go back to the internet and say, am I allowed to laugh at this? Is this supposed to be humorous? But yeah, he's a master. And I'll tell you, I mean, the songwriters, they'll have the most common authors are Vonnegut. Yeah. Cormac McCarthy comes up a lot. Bukowski, Raymond Carver tends to be the people that favor the the economy of language. Right.
I also like how the absurdism of Vonnegut, right? He's just kind of pointing out human foibles, and he's not afraid to just be like, and then she drank Drano.
Right.
or also, I just remember as a teenager reading it, I could just picture being on the couch at my parents' house and just reading it and be like, oh my God, there's a drawing of an anus here. This is hilarious.
Right. But it's so weird that's what I'm saying, is I didn't realize I could laugh at those things. It was so, and then once I realized that, it just made the book a different experience. Okay, it's okay to laugh. This is supposed to be funny, but it could also be tragic at the same time.
Right. I watched some like interviews with him on Charlie Rose as an older man. He's so honest about being like, of course I'm not as smart as I used to be. I'm 90 years old. Whatever. And I felt like I was like, oh, this guy is like because I had a bit of a contentious relationship with my own grandfather. He was just a little bit of a, that greatest generation, why are you waving your hands like that? What are you, Italian or something? And then I was like, oh no, Kurt Vonnegut, he's sort of like a surrogate grandfather figure for me,
There's some old syllabus of his. I'm sure you've seen it. Every so often it shows up on Twitter. Someone has saved a syllabus of his when he was a professor, and the things that he never wants to see in his students' writing. One of them, like I'm pretty sure he says, don't ever use a semicolon. That was like one of the big rules. So do you tend to go back to the classics a lot to read the classics?
Oh, the last great piece of literature that I read was Crossing to Safety. Have you read that?
No.
Wallace Stegner.
Oh no, I've not. I've read some of his stuff, but I haven't read that. So did you like it?
I really loved it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, and it was actually recommended to me by a camp counselor when I was 14.
And it's taken you this long.
And it took, I had a note on my, that I like pinned up on my wall that was like a note from him. Like, you should try. It was like, you know, dear Anand, you should try working out. You'll get a little bit bigger. Because it was, the summer camp was all about lifting canoes and hiking and it's like recommendations of things to read, Crossing to Safety while it's taken. And I'm glad I waited till I was, you know, 38, 39 to read it, because it's really about, it spans time of like a guy meeting his wife and then becoming a professor in Wisconsin and then getting old and then friends dying and that kind of thing. So yeah, I've got a ton of that. That's a really good, I highly recommend that book. It's kind of, and it's about like a couple and their social life, basically, which is,
I'll have to check that out.
Yeah, I think it's semi autobiographical. Yeah, I mean, I also like to read history books. I'm pretty obsessed with there's this book by Colin Woodard called American Nations, which is kind of just about the 13 nations that kind of founded America during the colonization period, from like, you know, New France, New Spain, Yankeedom, the Deep South, Tidewater, you know, and it's been an interesting way that's a way that I think about you know, a lot of political events that are going on. I haven't really quite put it into a song yet. Maybe talking about Puritanism. I have a line in the latest song about she never was so puritanical, which was which I always wanted to put something about Puritanism in a song, and that was actually from, these things just kind of come back. I remember telling my mom's best friend in India that I had taken acid for the first time, and she had just done ayahuasca for the first time, and it was great to talk to her because she was talking about, you know, I did ayahuasca and I threw up, and she was like, you know, I'll take acid any day over ayahuasca. And I was like, it's so funny talking to you about drugs, because my mom is just a little bit, she's so uptight. And she said to me, she said, yeah, when did Ronnie become so puritanical? And it was this great moment in my life where I realized, like, oh, my mom has this, she was in India, she was this rebel rebelling against the Indian thing, you know, smoking weed, doing all those things. And then as soon as she got to America, just kind of, she kept her independent spirit, but got a little bit absorbed into this secular puritanical thing where it's like, well, you don't do drugs because they're illegal, you know, that
right.
Whereas her, but it's still cool that she's like still best friends with this woman who's like leading these acid ceremonies in Germany. And stuff. Well, I'm seeing it so much now, with my kid being in 4th grade, and you realize that we're really entering this kind of this Manichaean view is really accepted now, of it's all good and evil, racist, right, anti-racist, vaccinated, anti-vaccinated. And like the goody two shoes in my kid's class will be like, Uma, are your parents even vaccinated? And I'm like, and she's like, yes, they are. Stop. I just haven't gotten mine yet. You know? And you see, and you're like, this is strange. So I think if I have anything unique to give out to the world as a songwriter, is I'm trying to explore that middle ground.
Right.
You know, which isn't necessarily the most effective for songwriting, because the most provocative things are just clear statements of good and evil, you know?